The silent backbone. When devotion becomes disappearing. Have you ever quietly stood behind someone else's success, only to realize one day they no longer include you in the story they tell? My name is Elaine Monroe. I'm 50 years old, and for over 17 years, I was the steady, silent backbone behind a man I once believed was my soulmate, my partner, my forever teammate. My husband, Calvin, is the founder of Blue Moon Events, a boutique event planning company that started right out of our garage in Flagstaff, Arizona. But if we're being honest, we were the founders. Not just him. I used to be a librarian, loved books, loved order, loved the beauty in small things. But when Calvin started dreaming of big stages, lakeside weddings, and candlelit receptions, I folded up my own dreams and tucked them away, to step in as the support system. I did things like writing emails for him at midnight, teaching myself Excel so I could manage the budget, hand-making 40 wedding invitations for our very first client because we couldn't afford printing, negotiating down venue prices just because I knew how to smile at the right time and call the right person. And I did it all with love. There was one bride, I still remember her, who stopped and stared at the reception space I had just finished setting up. She whispered, "You're honestly the magic behind this day." I smiled, then stepped out of the frame. Because to me, Calvin's success was ours. But here's the thing about being really good at working behind the scenes. At some point, people stop noticing you were ever there. It started with small things. I wasn't invited to a VIP client meeting because it wasn't necessary. A company team photo went up on Instagram. I wasn't in it. And then Calvin introduced me to a new vendor by saying, "This is my wife. She helps out around the house sometimes." I smiled. But something inside me tightened. Because I wasn't helping a little. I had helped him build the entire foundation. But now I was starting to feel like outdated software, useful once no longer needed. I didn't get angry at Calvin right away. Part of me had gotten used to not being seen. We women do that, don't we? We sacrifice quietly, hoping one day someone will notice. But sometimes if you wait too long, you stop seeing yourself in the story altogether. One night I stayed up late to check our monthly financial report. Something I'd always done. But this time I couldn't log in. The password had been changed. I stared at the screen in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. It was just a deep, steady sadness. No one told me I was no longer needed. No one said stop. They just quietly moved things to someone else and erased me like I had never been there. That's when I learned this. Silence isn't always a virtue. Sometimes it's a trap we dig ourselves, with love and loyalty as the shovel. And I know maybe someone listening right now has been the one standing behind someone else, behind a husband, behind a child, behind a boss. And if you've ever sacrificed so much that you forgot your own name in someone else's story, I want you to know, you deserve to be seen. I didn't walk away that night. But for the first time I started writing things down. Everything I had done. Everything I had signed. Everything I had poured myself into. Not to get revenge, but to remind myself I was here. I mattered. Then one day, a simple little email from the company accountant made it all clear. This erasure wasn't accidental. It was a plan. And I needed to make one of my own. In the next part, I'll tell you about a young woman named Lexie, the one Calvin said was just handling logistics, but who slowly took my name off every important document. Lexie was just logistics, but my name disappeared from the books. I used to believe that if I was good enough, quiet enough, and loyal enough, there would be no reason for anyone to replace me. But life doesn't run on fairness. I first met Lexie at a big product launch event in Scottsdale. Calvin introduced her with a casual pat on the shoulder. "This is Lexie. She's been helping me with logistics lately." I smiled politely, shook her hand, and didn't think much of it. Young. Sharp. Efficient. I thought, well, good. Maybe I'll finally get a little breathing room. And for a few months I did. Lexie handled scheduling, restaurant reservations, event bookings. Calvin started using phrases like internal restructuring more often. I told myself, that's normal, companies grow. Everyone needs to evolve. But then small things started to shift. One day, I noticed my company email access had been downgraded to viewer only. I couldn't make edits anymore. A wedding flower order, something I always handled, was now listed under Lexie's name. Called Calvin. He chuckled. Lexie just did it faster. You've been busy with things at home, right? I didn't respond. Not because he was right, he wasn't. But because for the first time I realized he truly didn't think I had a place in the business anymore. A week later, I tried logging into the accounting software I had used since day one. Access denied. First, I assumed it was a technical error. But when I asked Lexie, she replied, "Oh, we switched systems. Only the finance team has access now." I wasn't on the finance team. I wasn't on any team anymore. Calvin, when I brought it up, said with a shrug, "I just don't want you stressing over all that mess. You said you were tired, remember?" Oh, I remembered. I had said I was tired. Tired from years of working without a title, without recognition, without thanks. Tired from always standing behind, not because I wanted to step back, but because there was never space for me to stand next to. Then one afternoon, I saw an email from Lexie to a client. Attached was a budget spreadsheet using the same format I had created 6 years ago. Same layout. Same fonts. The file name was even still Elaine Budget V1. But now it came from Lexie. And the credit? All hers. I stared at the screen. Frozen. It felt like watching someone else walk down the aisle in a wedding dress I had hand-stitched. Only the groom wasn't mine, and my name had been erased from the program. And that's when the lesson hit me clearly. Not everyone who takes your place is the villain. But if you don't hold your ground, someone else will fill the space. Just as naturally as grass grows after rain. I didn't blame Lexie. She was doing the job she was hired to do. The person who quietly removed me from everything was Calvin. And I couldn't pretend not to see that anymore. Have you ever been replaced without a word? No explanation. No conversation. Just slowly phased out of the emails, off the meeting invites, and out of the story? If you've ever felt that, leave a comment. Because when we share, others who feel invisible might finally feel seen. When Calvin announced he was heading out on a 4-day work retreat with Lexie, I knew it was time. Not to reclaim my old title, but to reclaim myself. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened that morning in our kitchen, the day I packed everything, except my dignity. The day I packed everything except my dignity. Do you remember a moment in life when you packed your things in silence, not because you were weak, but because you were done being diminished? I remember that morning vividly. The sky was clear, a gentle breeze moved through the windows, and sunlight poured across the kitchen tiles I had cleaned 1,000 times. Calvin had flown out to Nashville the night before. He said it was a leadership retreat with senior partners. I didn't ask. He didn't offer more. I knew Lexie was with him. I saw the photo she posted, high heels against a luxury hotel rug. I recognized the buffet table behind her. It was from the exact venue Calvin had booked for the meetings. No one said anything. But truth doesn't always need words. I sat at the dining table, coffee cold in my cup. In front of me was an old wedding contract, covered in red pen, my handwriting, my seating chart sketches, the timeline I had built hour by hour. Back then, I did it all out of passion. Because I believed I was building something with my husband. Now all of that work lived in the Lexie Quinn portfolio section on the company's website. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger. Just emptiness. Then I stood up. Each step quiet, as if afraid I might change my mind. I opened the closet and pulled out 2 suitcases. One for clothes. One for the things that truly belonged to me. I didn't take much. Just what I had created. What had my name on it. A folder filled with thank you emails from clients. Contracts I had signed. Event photos with me holding a clipboard backstage. And a budget spreadsheet I designed in 2018, the one they still used, just with my name erased. I also took my grandmother's old porcelain mug. It had a tiny crack down the side, but she always said she kept it because it fit just right in her hand. No market value, but full of memory. And real. I left behind the sleek designer suitcase Calvin once gifted me, expensive, glossy, made for appearances. I didn't need appearances. I needed truth. I left without a note. No letter on the table. No voicemail. Just the spare key, placed quietly on the shelf by the door. And then I walked out. I drove to the old storage unit we once used for event props. The rental agreement still had my name on it. I left my suitcase there, locked it up. Then I headed to a small Airbnb on the edge of town. No memories. No wedding photos. No white daisies like the ones I used to set in centerpieces. I sat down at a wooden table, opened my laptop, and called a lawyer. Not a bulldog. Just a calm, seasoned woman who understood community property, separate assets, and the quiet timing of reclaiming yourself. "I'm ready," I told her. Leaving wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new boundary. For the first time in years, I wasn't stepping into the role of his wife or the woman behind the scenes. I was Elaine, the co-founder, the partner, and now the woman who stood up. Have you ever packed your things and walked away? No drama, no speeches, just to hold on to your dignity? And if you have, what did you take with you? A photograph? A keepsake? Or maybe just your silence? Leave a comment. Because sometimes sharing what we chose to keep helps someone else recognize themselves in the story. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened when Calvin returned and realized I hadn't just left. I had taken with me the proof that I'd been there from the very beginning. This time, the contract has my name on it. Calvin came home that Sunday afternoon, completely unaware that I had left 3 days earlier. I didn't leave a note. No message. Not a single obvious trace. But I knew. He'd realized something was missing. Not the suitcase. Not the empty closet. But the documents that were no longer in the bottom drawer of his desk. On Monday morning, my attorney sent an official letter to the company requesting an internal financial audit, along with a list of documents I had every right to access, as the unofficial co-founder. Included were invoices under my name, the very first client contract bearing my signature, and thank you emails addressed directly to me, not to the company and certainly not to Lexie. I wasn't looking for a lawsuit. I wasn't out to win some drawn-out war. I simply wanted back what was mine, what I had spent 17 years building without ever being credited. I'll never forget the moment Calvin's lawyer called my legal team. "Mrs. Monroe holds no legal stake in the company," he said. My attorney replied calmly, "We have documentation proving her consistent, informal role in financial operations, along with evidence of intellectual property and image used without consent." There was a long pause, long enough for me to know they understood. This time I wasn't here to ask. I was here to claim. For years I had drafted contracts, never signed them, planned every event, never had my name listed. But this time was different. We entered mediation in a quiet conference room downtown. Calvin looked at me, and for the first time in years he had no words. No "what are you doing here?" No charming smile I once fell for. My lawyer laid out the folder across the table. Evidence of intellectual property use, altered contracts without my consent, and notably an email from Lexie using my name to build trust with a client. A clear breach. I looked at Calvin and said, "I don't want the company. I don't even want compensation. I just want the next business contract I write to have my name on it. And the client accounts I built, separated and transferred." He paused, then nodded. And in that moment I think he understood. He understood I wasn't the same woman who used to wait in the car after his events. I was the woman who helped build half the business, just never got to sign her name. A few weeks later, I received the official paperwork for my own company, Second Draft Events, a small event planning firm, built exactly the way I had once dreamed. Small, intimate, real faces behind real names. And every contract, every quote, every meeting note bore my name. No more hiding behind admin support. No more switched logins. No more being replaced. Here's the lesson I carry with me. Just because you're silent doesn't mean you're insignificant. But if you don't speak your name, someone else might speak for you and rewrite your role entirely. Have you ever poured your heart into something, only to watch your name disappear? And if so, what did you do to reclaim your place or to heal from it? Leave a comment, because your story might be the very thing another woman needs to hear while she's still suffering in silence. In the next part, I'll share what happened on the first day I opened my new office, and the unexpected thing I received. Not from Calvin, but from Lexie. Just a small gesture, but one that stayed with me for a very long time. Rewritten by my own hand. When healing doesn't need applause. It was drizzling the morning I unlocked the door to my small office at Second Draft Events. I brought with me a bouquet of baby's breath, the same flower I used most often for brides with tight budgets. On the desk sat a brand new notebook. Stamped on the cover were the words, "She built quietly." And then she began again. There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no cupcakes, no photos for social media. Just me. The soft scent of fresh wood. The quiet tapping of rain on the windows. And a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. I didn't start over to prove anything to anyone. I started over because I refused to let my story end with silently walking away from the wrong chapter. I wanted to keep writing, and this time in my own hand. A week later, a small envelope appeared in my company mailbox. No return address. Only 5 handwritten words. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Inside was an old hair clip, the kind I used to handcraft as gifts for our very first brides. I remembered that day. Lexie and I had wrapped it together. She'd asked me how to tie the ribbon so it wouldn't come loose. I don't know why she sent it. Maybe it was an apology. Maybe it was her way of letting go. I didn't write back. But I wasn't angry either. Because when you've truly healed, you no longer need validation. You don't need an apology to find peace. You just need to know you chose kindness for yourself. Soon I started receiving small contracts. A lakeside wedding for a couple with no parents left to help. A 30th anniversary celebration for 2 retired teachers. A 60th birthday party for a single mother who had quietly raised her children alone for 3 decades. Each time I saw their smiles under candlelight beside cakes with names spelled correctly, I felt myself heal a little more. Because I understood them. I knew what it felt like to be overlooked. And I knew the quiet dignity of simply being called by the right name and seen in your rightful place. The last lesson I carry with me is this. Healing doesn't need applause. It just needs the courage to rewrite your story, no matter how brutally the last page was erased. If you're in the middle of starting over, whether in marriage, in your career, or in your sense of trust, know this: you are not alone. You are not weak for having loved deeply. And you are not wrong for having waited longer than you should have. You're human. And sometimes that's enough. Have you ever rewritten a chapter of your life? Maybe you started a new job, moved into a new space, or picked up a small forgotten passion. If so, share it in the comments. Because the story you think is small might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if stories like this matter to you, stories of quiet strength, of unseen labor, of rising without fanfare, consider subscribing to the channel. Not because I need the numbers, but because maybe, just maybe, the story you've been holding inside will one day be told here, word by word, in your own voice. Thank you for staying with me this far. We'll meet again in the stories that no one tells, but so many people need to hear.